Today I'm going to show you how to develop a pattern for a conical form. A cone is really just a cylinder that tapers to a point, so the base diameter is different from the top diameter of that cone. One of the things you need to establish when you're making a pattern for a cone is the pivot point for that cone. And that is simply found by extending the side profile of the cone until the two sides converge at the top. This half circle describes the base of the cone. Because the cone is perfectly round and it tapers evenly on all sides, I just drew a half pattern here. And as always, I'm dividing this base into equal parts. Next, I'll extend these reference lines up to the side profile of the cone. Now with this simple example, it isn't necessary to draw the reference lines on the cone. It's a perfectly symmetrical piece. All the reference lines are going to be exactly the same length, so there really isn't anything to calculate. But the next example that I'm going to be going over with you is going to be a little more complicated, so it's important to understand where the reference lines come from. When you're drawing a reference line for a cone, they start at the base and they converge at the pivot point. So far, all the reference lines that we've used in all the examples have been parallel to each other, but the reference lines define the shape of the piece. So if the piece is tapered, the reference lines have to converge towards each other in order to describe that shape. To create the pattern piece, I'm going to start from a center line and work my way out on either side. I'm creating a separate drawing because that's how I was shown how to do it, and the guy that was teaching me this was basically trying to remember what he was taught 20 years earlier, so this is basically what we came up with. I know that this technically isn't the proper way to do it, but it works fine. It may take a little longer, but you do get the same results. When you unroll a cone shape like this, you get something that resembles a fan. To get the bottom radius for that fan, I've used a compass setting that goes from the pivot point to the base of the side profile. That describes the radius of the base when it's laid flat. Now to get the total length of that baseline, I simply transfer the divisions that I added to my half pattern to the pattern piece. I'm running out of paper here, but because I'm working from the center line, this side of the pattern is going to be identical to the left side of the pattern. When I have all the divisions laid out, all I need to do is connect the outside marking to the pivot point. And I'll do the same thing to establish the top of the pattern. Here I'm just using the compass to measure the angle of the left side of the pattern so I can transfer that measurement to the right. The only reason I'm doing this is because the end point on the pattern fell beyond the page on the right hand side, so this gives me a way of drawing in a line that I can extend later when I'm creating the actual pattern piece. In this example, I'll be creating a pattern piece for a cone shape where the pivot point is totally off to one side and the base is not a regular shape. The top drawing is the side profile of the shape, and once again I'm just using a half pattern for the cross section of the top view. The top and bottom half are symmetrical. And here once again the curved part of the pattern piece is divided off into an equal number of steps. This dotted line represents the half pattern for the front view of the cone. I don't need this pattern for anything, I just wanted to illustrate that the shape goes from the baseline and converges to a single point. In the first example, I didn't bother drawing the reference lines on the half pattern for the top view of the cone. That's because we didn't need to measure anything and there wasn't any point. But here, each one of these lines is going to be a different length, so I need to draw in how the reference lines relate to the shape. And in this case, they start from the base and they converge to one point. So each one of these reference lines represents a right angle triangle that we need to figure out. I'm drawing in the base right now. The height of the cone is determined by the side profile in the top drawing, and then I'm going to create a working drawing to establish the hypotenuse of these lines, which is the line that I'm going to need to transfer to the pattern piece. And here again I'm going to create a separate drawing, and I'm going to work from the center line and develop the pattern on each side of that center line. Once again, this shape unfolded is going to resemble a fan, and the first dimension that we need to put in is the overall length of that main radius. So the point that I'm marking in now is the total length of that center line for this shape. And that is the only line that we're going to be able to measure directly off of this drawing. The side profile gives us the length of the long side of that right angle triangle for the center line, but for every other line we're going to need to figure out what that length is. So for the rest of this pattern, it's just a matter of transferring the length of the baseline for the right angle triangle that you're working on to the working drawing, and then measuring the hypotenuse for that triangle. I'm just going to use the top drawing, the side profile of the cone, as the working drawing. I don't need to use that drawing for anything, and the height of the right angle triangle is already established, so I just need to put the various lengths of the base of the right angle triangle along the baseline and then measure the hypotenuse. To get the correct location of this reference point, I need to transfer the length of the hypotenuse, which I have done here, and then I use the caliper setting that I used to divide the baseline, and I'll cross those 2 points. And then I'll just continue this process for each of the lines. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, by all means give it a thumbs up. If you want to support this channel, you have a couple of options to do that. The first thing, of course, is to just subscribe. Second, if you have ideas or photographs of things you'd like to see on this channel, send them along. I'll turn them into a video. If you want to lend your financial support to this channel, you have a couple of options there. You can go to my channel homepage and click on the options that you see in the banner. So thank you for your support, and with your help I'll be doing this for some time to come. We'll see you next time.